Hey everybody, this week I have Jason Carlo, a Nano Youtuber, and so he said something that set me down. You know how I get. I go down these crazy tangents about accent, and I teasing my friend's mom, and I just want to make sure everybody knows that I'm just an accent and dialect nerd. I have a certificate to teach and to educate people about accents and to help people with vocal issues, like if a teacher's losing their voice, that kind of stuff. So when I hear an accent or when I hear something or somebody talk about an accent, I get like going crazy. I just get like nerd love for it. And that's all I want to do is talk about accents. So when I joke around about my friend's mom's Filipino accent, it's because it intrigues me to no end. And I love her so much. So it intrigues me because she speaks like 4 languages and she picked up a foreign country's dialect that wasn't native to her own country and then moved here and then never lost that. And so for whatever reason, she just kept that one accent. And that fascinates me. I love talking about that kind of stuff. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm like being mean to my friend's mom or making fun of accents or that I am belittling accents, because anybody who comes here who has an accent is already 90% ahead of pretty much every single American who barely speaks English well, let alone a foreign language. And now I'm going to get I'm going to get shit on for making fun of Americans. No. So that's it. I don't want people to think that like I have an issue with accents. I spend way too much time talking about them, loving them, listening to them, doing fake ones of my own to try to perfect them for auditions. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Enjoy this episode with Jason Carlo, and thank you for all the support you've given to the show for the last couple of years. It's so appreciative, and I love making the show for all of you. Okay, talk to you soon. Enjoy the show. Bye. Hey everybody, welcome back to Keyword Crypto. This is Michael, and I have Jason Carlo, special guest. Jason, what is up, my friend?
What's going on, Keyword Crypto? How's it going, everyone?
So you pinged me about coming on the show, and I was like, yeah, of course, dude. Because I think it's always interesting to have a fellow social media person come on. You create YouTube videos, and I was intrigued to talk to you about your experience. And so like why exactly did you want to come on?
Well, yeah, so basically I wanted to spread the word about Nano, not like you don't like in this podcast at all. Like I'm a avid follower and listener too. And it's just because Nano, I feel like, doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. As much as there's a lot of content and like community members out there, I feel like Nano is kind of like the underdog of crypto, especially nowadays, right? There's a lot of shit coins around, and it's hard to kind of navigate your way through all of the thousands of cryptocurrencies out there. And I wanted to create content around that and, come on here.
So why don't you give us like a quick rundown of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in the Philippines and I moved to the US around 2012, almost 10 years ago. And I did the whole school thing. And I was working at a startup, a direct to consumer startup. And after that, COVID hit, and it was a bag startup. So unfortunately, it didn't quite work out because of COVID. Not a lot of people were traveling and wanting bags, right? And ended back up in LA and kind of booted up the camera and thought that creating content around Nano was a great angle to take. I feel like. So yeah.
Wait a minute. So you've only been in this country for 10 years? Because I would never have guessed that.
I'll take that as a compliment, Michael.
From your
Thank
accent.
You.
My best friend's half Filipino, half Chinese, and his parents have been here for like 35 years, and they still drive 55 on the freeway, Brian. Brian, make sure you drive 55 on the freeway. And I joke around
under 55.
Yeah, and I joke around with his mom because she's actually Chinese and she moved to the Philippines in her 20s. And so I was like, and she has more of a Filipino accent than than her husband, his dad, who grew up in the Philippines, and I was just like, why is your accent so like it's so like you're more. I honestly, when he said he was half Filipino, half Chinese, I thought his mom was the Filipino one, and his dad was Chinese, because that's how thick her Filipino accent is. But
Yeah,
you've been here for 10 years, and I would have thought you were born here because your accent is so clean.
yeah, for sure. Well, like the Philippines has a lot of Chinese residents, at
Yes.
least rather Chinese descent,
Yeah.
and with the accent, I when I moved here, I already understood that there will be, unfortunately, a stigma around accents and what kind of opportunities you'll be given and what kind of opportunities will be presented to you, because it's not the sexiest accent, it's not the sexiest accent, so it's hard. So I kind of put it on me to kind of make it a thing to not remove it fully, because
Yeah.
trust me, if there's a deal or anything like that with a fellow Filipino, I'll whip out the Filipino accent. So there's that. Yeah.
So, do you speak natively Tagalog?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I'm bilingual. So
So, if anybody doesn't know anything about the Philippines, how many languages are there in the Philippines?
there are a lot, like more than a dozen, because there's like 7,000 islands in there and like a lot of dialects,
Right?
and
It's
it's
crazy.
ridiculous. But the main kind of mainland language is Tagalog. So that's like the city kind of language, I guess.
Yeah. When I heard that, I was just like, wow. I was shocked that a place so small can have that many different languages, because I had a couple Filipino friends, uh, cousins of his, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we can understand our other cousins because we don't speak the same language." And I was like, "How big is the Philippines? Like, isn't it like the size of Virginia?" And
Yeah,
that,
it's basically like California. I think like the whole California is like the Philippines, but I guess like with the U.S., right? There's a lot of different accents and different
yeah,
regions of the U.S. So I think instead of accents, it's like languages over there.
yeah, and I guess with so many different islands, I mean, if people weren't island hopping too much 100 years ago, I could see languages just kind of like naturally diverting, and I find all that stuff fascinating. So
No,
um,
I get you for sure. I mean, a lot of island hopping had happened, however many years ago, and there's a lot of Spanish influences in the
yes,
Philippines, last names, food,
yes.
even just words, even. Yeah,
Well, welcome. And I mean, and you picked the right coast, because I know you think that the accent could potentially hurt you, but I feel like on the West Coast, everyone's so used to it at this point.
that's
Everybody
what
my
I'm.
age, I'm in my 40s, and I don't know a single person that didn't have some kind of um, relationship with a first or second generation Filipino. I mean, it was just
That's
so
what I'm
common.
thankful for like my parents, because California, if I had moved somewhere else, California is so accepting and so diverse,
Yeah,
and I get my fair share of like Jollibee and Filipino food, and I'm thankful for that. And because it'd be a lot harder to assimilate in different regions of the country, in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, so back to cryptocurrency. Nice little diversion away from cryptocurrency for a second. Why Nano? And before you start going, to everybody, yes, I shill Nano sometimes on this show. I do bring in some Nano people. Just bear with me. Why Nano for you?
Yeah. So, well, I don't know if your viewers know, but Nano is the best currency out there. But anyway, I'm just kidding. Maybe not. But the reason why I chose Nano is because, as a lot of cryptocurrency enthusiasts around the globe have used Bitcoin or even Ethereum, right? It gives a lot of anxiety when you do transactions. It takes way too long. You
Yeah,
don't know if you put the wrong address. You don't know if you did it correctly. You don't know if you're gonna have the confirmation confirmed in like the next hour or so,
yeah,
and that just is so unnecessary in my opinion. If there's a solution for transactions like that, right? So that's why I think like I really enjoyed Nano and really, dedicated my content and my talent to it.
That's funny that you said that because I completely forget the anxiety I used to feel when I would send Bitcoin to different exchanges or to different wallets, and it would take anywhere from 10 minutes to 3 hours, and just literally having no clue how long it was going to take, and just being
Yeah,
like, "Oh dear God, I hope I didn't send it to the wrong address."
yeah, it's so frustrating because actually the reason why the first time I got into like cryptocurrencies, I guess, was back in 2012, 2013 when I first moved here. I was trading digital items for basically money, right? And some people would offer Bitcoin. And that was my first I guess interaction with cryptocurrencies. And Bitcoin was worth around 150 to $250 ish back then, and I didn't really pay much mind to it. And it would just take a while. It would just take a while. I mean, granted, it was a lot like earlier in the days, so like the network wasn't as congested.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin natively is just like clunky and slow, and the user experience is not. It's not the most fun, you know.
I made the I did a blog post comparing it to the Ford Model T, where it's super necessary for cryptocurrency. You have to have that first kind of breakthrough cryptocurrency, but then after a while, it's just like set that Ford Model T to the side and go buy a Tesla or whatever, and because it's just completely unusable at this point for me.
No, yeah, that's like the most fun analogy with like real life use cases. The Ford Model T 100 years ago and 100 years after the Tesla Model S came out. I think the
Yeah,
Roadster, or I don't know, like after 100 years. But the Tesla came out and it's like so fast, and it's just like the user experience is amazing, the drive experience is amazing, and it's just like much more efficient as a vehicle and as a user in itself.
yeah.
And like, would you rather take the Ford Model T for driving from San Diego to, I don't know, LA, right? And then 2 hour drive, or take a Tesla, right? I mean,
Yeah,
granted, it might be like the same kind of like duration, but at the same time, like it's much more fun, and also I think faster. I don't think you can go a lot faster than like 40 miles an hour in the Model T.
exactly. Yeah, I think it tops out at that. I think it's a little
Yeah,
too dangerous. Anything beyond there.
I know, it's like everything like just starts falling off.
Do you get back to the Philippines often?
Last time I was there was 2017.
Okay.
So around 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and I love it, man. If I could go like every year or like every other year, and it would just be so much fun. Like I really try my best to stick with my roots. And the thing is also with segueing back to
Yeah.
cryptocurrency, is because I think the Philippines can really benefit with Nano in terms of banking and fees, because a dollar fee, or like $2, $3, or even $15, let's do that, like the average today of Bitcoin. um it just, it's a lot for a third world country like the Philippines, and I think that's
That's
why I gravitated towards Nano a lot.
that. I mean, that's what I was getting to. I was wondering what the current fiat conversion was. What's the name of the Filipino currency?
Pesos.
Okay, so like, do you know off the top of your head what the conversion rate is for U.S. dollars to pesos?
Yeah, around 45 pesos, which is $1.
Okay,
And to give the listeners an idea of what $45 can get you, it can basically get you a meal, or a trip, round trip from I guess like LA standards, from downtown LA all the way to like San Diego, I think, like round trip, maybe. Yeah, around that.
on a bus or on a
Oh
car?
no, on like a bus, like a Greyhound kind of vibe, you know?
Okay, I mean that's insane. So to sit there and say, "Hey, you have to pay, you have to not have dinner tonight because you need to pay," even if it was only $1, even if a Bitcoin fee was only $1. Like, okay, you can't have dinner tonight because you got to transact on Bitcoin tonight instead. It's like,
That's what's like so frustrating about Bitcoin and Ethereum too.
yeah,
Granted, there are like there's like the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is, as much as all the maxis say, like, it's not fully free. It's not free to
Yeah.
actually access the channels and send, I don't know, 100 sats to someone. It's not fully free compared to like Nano. That's frustrating because those things add up, man. Those things really add up, and I think that it really affects third world countries. And it's just, I don't know, coming from there and like being born there and like growing up there, it's hard to see this exuberant amount of fees just going down the drain.
And I mean, I think there's just a real disconnect. I feel like the majority of people in Bitcoin, are from developed nations. They're most likely white. They're most likely programmers or some kind of tech job where they were working in the industry and making decent money, and they got into crypto. I mean, I just don't think they have any comprehension of what it's like to live in a place where $1 can get you a whole meal.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. This might be a hot take, but like, they visit for like a week or 2 weeks or maybe even a month, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's like so life changing and so like,
Yeah,
you know, eye opening." But like, you don't really understand when you're born there and like really in the trenches. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it's it's tough seeing. I don't know, like the recent average, or rather like the whole day fee amount, I guess, for Ethereum was like 70 million the other day. I was like, dude,
yeah.
that's like the whole GDP of some countries.
And they brag about it, and it drives me crazy. They're like, "Yeah, it just shows how much activity is on it." It's like that's not a good thing, man. All you're doing is bragging about how 99% of the planet can't use Ethereum.
Exactly. No, I definitely agree with you on that. And it's just that, like, granted, there are a lot of people buying NFTs and, just buying all these, like, shit coins, for lack of a better word. And they brag about it. And I think that's a huge problem in terms of the cryptocurrency space, because we're all about status, I think,
Yeah,
in the cryptocurrency space. Bragging your newly minted, I don't know, what do you call this, a board ape,
yeah.
right? And all these, like, you know I don't know, it's just all these NFTs. It's all for status, and it's not really doing anything. Granted, I do enjoy some of the artwork, don't get me wrong, and I do enjoy the whole idea of NFTs, but the real use case of cryptocurrency, and I think the whole cryptocurrency ethos in its heart, is actual peer-to-peer transactions.
Well, I mean, so this is where I disagree with you. Is I think, I mean, honestly, and this is what I get frustrated with Nano about, and the Nano community a little bit. I always jump in for the last couple of years. I've been like, look, you need some kind of banking system. You need Nano to be able to interact with the banking system, because banking has been around since the beginning of man, because people have needed to borrow money and people have had extra money and they loan it, and that's just the way the world works. I don't mind if somebody has a better alternative to banking, but you can't just say, like, here's Nano, and then not offer the alternative to banking. Because just saying, be your own bank, hold on, like self custody. Well, what happens if you forget, you lose your keys, or you lose your, forget your password, or this or that, and then all of a sudden your entire life is just wiped out in one forgotten password, or one, you thought you put it in a fireproof safe, but the building collapsed on it and cracked it, and it burned everything inside. Like, and you had your key written down on a piece of paper, and it's just like, there's
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Like, where are you exactly disagreeing? Because I definitely want to understand. And
well, I mean, so I feel like you got to have some kind of like decentralized finance, and Nano needs to be able to interact with that decentralized finance, and that's the reason why Ethereum is just blowing the doors off of Bitcoin right now, is because they have the ability to do smart contracts and be able to have decentralized finance. And people really, I mean, that is in essence the whole purpose of cryptocurrency, is decentralization. And how can we recreate the real world? See, my frustration is, like when a Greenpeace person says, "Oh, people should stop, driving so much." Well, expecting people who have built their entire life around having to pay rent and they have to go to their job and drive to their job, if there's no alternative for them to get to work, asking them not to drive their car to work is a non-starter because they have to be able to drive to work so they can raise their family, feed their family and pay their rent and all that kind of stuff. So it's one thing to say, hey, we built this entire subway system and there's a stop right outside your house and a stop right outside your work. Please stop driving your car so much. We have this amazing new subway technology and it'll get you to work just as well, and it's not bad for the environment because the subway runs on clean electricity. So like that's great. But to expect people just to stop driving, it's like what? Well, it's like you're going to stop feeding your family? No. So the idea that like, okay, well, we have Nano, we have Bitcoin, but you can't do any kind of normal banking on it without it being centralized. Well, the whole purpose of cryptocurrency is
Gotcha.
decentralization, and we can't expect people not to use banks anymore because that's just what we've been doing for the last 20,000 years, 10,000 years. And so if you have an alternative to banks, great, show me the alternative. But until then, we have to be able to recreate the banking system in a more decentralized, um, egalitarian way that helps everybody, not just the rich bankers. And I think DeFi really does that because anybody can provide liquidity. So that could be your savings account, is providing liquidity to a trading pair and getting some of the fees back. And that's kind of your interest. And so like I just like the idea of that.
No, yeah, gotcha. I'm not fully against DeFi. What I'm just saying is like first in the NFT realm of cryptocurrency, some of it are kind of, you know, shit, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
And with DeFi in itself, I think the whole idea and the whole movement of banking people without a centralized authority is a wonderful, wonderful movement, and also um I guess angle for cryptocurrencies. What I'm just against is that like when people just fully use Ethereum. With Nano in itself, like I guess you can be your own bank if you do keep your own, your seed, you protect it as best as you can. And I do understand the argument with like the whole building burning down and all of that, right? And I feel like there are a lot of other things that you have to worry about when the building burns down and you lose your seed.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I enjoy and also appreciate about Nano is because you can technically be your own bank once Nano is fully built out and commercial grade and used by the everyday, Andy, Joe, whatever it is. It's literally you can just be your own bank because if you have your own seed, no one else has access to it, and it's safe, and you can just spend it, and you know you can actually use it as a currency.
But I mean, you come from a place where I'm sure you encountered parts of the Philippines. I don't know. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were a city boy the entire time. But but there are absolutely parts of the Philippines that don't have access to banks,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Like just
So what do? They just hide it under their mattress. How safe is
yeah,
that? That's terrible. And
yeah,
they're not making any money off their money. They're not their money isn't growing in any way. So that's what I get frustrated with Nano about. Is it's like it just doesn't make sense. So I'm just going to sit there and sit on my money. Well, how do I know if how do I loan it out to people and make some interest? How do I, it's like so I'm just like, let's say I had like a million Nano. How do I find people to loan it out to make some interest on it? How do I do that safely? How do I like there's just so many points of centralization with Nano by not having smart contracts that I get frustrated on because it's like, okay, well, if money isn't flowing and it's not being, it's not circular where it's like being loaned and repaid and loaned and repaid, then the economy just is kind of stagnant because the money's just kind of sitting in everyone's individual wallets, and it's very difficult for it to cycle outside of when I actually go buy something.
see, I think I definitely get your argument. And but the thing is, like, growing up from the Philippines, I don't think it's like the whole loaning thing and like the banking thing and like, hey, how do I get interest into my money or like from my money? And how do I make it worth it that I'm holding a million nano or whatever, right? I think the whole issue comes from education in terms of financial education, financial literacy, and I think it's a different conversation when it comes to that because there are a huge gap in terms of financial education in the Philippines, and in terms of social classes, there's a huge difference when with like the persona of someone saying like, "Hey, how do I spend nano to buy my family a meal or whatever?" Right in a province, and
Yeah.
there's another persona where it's like, "Hey, how do I earn interest from my 1,000 nano or a million nano and hold on to it for like, I don't know, a year, 10 years, 5 years, whatever the case may be." And the whole gap between that is just education. And I think that's where it kind of strikes a chord in me because I didn't learn all of this in school. I didn't learn all of this. Like my family never really taught me this. Like they had to learn it on their own too, you know?
See, that's how I know you're American now, because that's how most Americans are too.
What
most
do you
Ameri-
mean? Wait, what?
most Americans don't learn financial literacy in school, and most Americans don't have parents that know financial literacy. And so the majority of Americans are growing up not knowing anything about money.
Exactly.
That's why, the rich people, they know about money and they teach their kids at a very, very young age how to handle money.
Exactly. And that's why it's a lot tougher because I mean, the Philippines is not the best performing country in terms of GDP and in terms of education, but moving here, I felt like there's a huge opportunity in terms of like teaching a lot of people about financial education and about interest, loans, APRs, all the terms that people get so what do you call this? Like intimidated about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I guess my biggest frustration with Nano is like, okay, so let's say I'm living in a small village, or like, a small one of the smaller islands in the Philippines, and we need to build a bridge, but we don't have enough money in the village to get all the supply. It's like, so what do? You just don't have the bridge? Like, that's what I mean. Like, I feel like that's what getting loans and like micro, even if it's just a micro loan, and not from a shady, banker who's a piece of shit, but like an actual, like a credit union type thing. Like, I feel like you need some kind of resource, or else it's just kind of it just everything just kind of stops. Because if you can't cross that river, and so you can't like build the village anymore, you can't grow anymore. Like, you're just stuck until you can figure out a way to get that money to build that bridge. And I feel like that's a very like specific small thing, example, but that's kind of in the grand scheme of things. If you're a small business owner and you're kind of stuck at this point where you want to expand your business, like, the business next door to you shut down, and they offered you the space, but you don't have enough money for it, but you can't actually make any more money because you don't have enough space to grow more. And you're never going to, like, at the current rate, you're never going to be able to save up enough money to buy that space. Like, that's a perfect example of what a loan is perfect for, because you have that capital up front. You can knock down the wall, you can expand your business, and you can grow it, and you can slowly pay it back. But you can't do that with just Nano and a wallet, right? Like, you need
Yeah.
smart contracts, you need banking, you need loans,
Right.
you need these abilities to do these things. And right now, the only way for people to do that with Nano is through a centralized platform. And that's what I kind of get frustrated with. It's like, are we decentralized, or are we not decentralized? Like,
No, I definitely get you on that. To touch up on your point, the first point in terms of like the bridge, um, it's f- coming from, I guess, like the background with the Philippines. It's hard because people in the provinces are honestly content with what they have, and they have a farm or whatever it is. Like they don't want to build a bridge going to the city or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
in terms of like agriculture and like scaling their business, right? Very SF thing to do, like SF startup. They don't think that way. They just want to make sure that their family's fed like tomorrow and next few weeks after that. And I get your frustration for sure, since I've experienced both sides. I lived in SF for a while, and I've also lived in the Philippines for a very long time. I do get both sides, and I understand because if people would just know and people would just understand, hey, like there's other angles and other routes you can take. You can take a loan out, or whatever it is. Like if it's nano, like you don't have to loan it out in terms of just nano. You can convert to fiat, and but that's obviously a little bit more technical. Convert to fiat and just get some loan against that. That's different. And I feel like going back to nano, I feel like it's really solving the issue with people living in unbanked areas and being the actual currency of the future, like digital money in the sense. And I feel like that also, like I said, I feel like it comes down to education, and it's hard when people are just thinking about feeding their family tomorrow or the next week. They're not thinking about like massive gains and Wall Street bets and all the green candles.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, I understand both sides, and I get that frustration too, because like, hey, if I could take out a loan with my nano, dude, that would be perfect. But I think nano does one job perfectly and so excellent. And I think like it should keep doing that. And it's frustrating because honestly, might be a hot take too, but I would love to buy NFTs with my nano and loan it out and whatever it
Yeah.
is and all the smart contract stuff. But I just have to accept that it can't, unfortunately.
I mean, I've always said, not always, but for the last couple of years, I've said, I don't think nano is going to be a thing that people use. In my mind, it's going to be like the backbone of things, kind of like TCP/IP, and they're not going to know what it is, and it's just kind of going in the background. Because when we had Colin on the show, I flat out asked him. I said, "Can you point to an example of a fixed supply monetary system being successful in the history of humankind?" And he said, "No." And he said, "I know it's an experiment. This is absolutely an experiment." And so we're asking people to try something that has never, ever, ever been done before. And I think that's my fear versus like we're trying to do too much all at the same time. So we're trying to convince people that a decentralized cryptocurrency can work. And then we're also trying to convince them that technically a deflationary currency can work, even though we know that deflationary currencies never work. Because technically a fixed supply is deflationary as long as humanity increases the population. So that's another one of my fears, where it's just like, and I'm bringing these things up to you because you're a well-educated guy at this point, and so so I wanted to get your what's your take on that, on those 2 points?
Yeah. So I definitely get you on that side with nano just being like just working its wonderful magical ways in the background. And I think that's also a great thing to have in humanity. But if we aim to become the deflationary currency, by we I mean like people that use nano and just like people that like it and actually transact with it. If we just use nano as a deflationary currency on our day-to-day life, I think that it actually says something to what the future of currency can be. Because in a sense of like, if you use one nano to buy a coffee or something, currently it's trading around like $5 to $6 each. You can buy like a nice, really like a coffee with that. And if you
Yeah.
just use that and you lose your one nano, it's deflationary in that sense. And like, do you lose value in that? Right? You on a micro scale, I feel like you gained value because you got what you paid for, and you got the coffee, and you got you use a currency that you have the to spend on that coffee, right? And I feel like with Nano just working on the background, I think that's also a huge opportunity in terms of businesses because there's a lot of, I mean, granted, cryptocurrencies are not as regulated as it is now today in 2021. But I feel like in the future, there will be some sort of regulations in terms of like credit cards and, cryptocurrency in a sense where sometimes credit cards cannot be used. Sorry, they cannot be used for certain transactions, and I feel like Nano will be able to solve that, depending on where our homies at the United States government feel like.
I mean, and also I want to warn people that every time, and when I had Sharon on a couple weeks ago, U.S. tax accountant, and she flat out said you probably shouldn't use your cryptocurrency just because every time you use it, it's a taxable event, and you have to pay 30% on that purchase, plus all the taxes that you're already paying for it, like sales tax and all that. And so like that becomes a huge, and you have to track every single time you buy anything with cryptocurrency, and you have to store that, and you have to report that at the end of the year and then pay taxes on it. Like right now in the US, it's such a fucking mess.
Well, also, Michael, I listened to that podcast. Great episode, by the way. If
Thank
people
you.
haven't listened to that, Sharon did also say that people in the cryptocurrency tax space don't know what the fuck they're doing,
Exactly.
and I think it just comes down to education. I feel like, and it's hard because it's like the Wild West. Like all these coins, like save the kids, safe moon, whatever. I don't want to burst anyone's bubbles here, but there's a lot of shady currencies out there, and it's just not working out for a lot of people. And it's a Wild West, like I said. And even Sharon, I looked into her website as well, the advisory group, I believe, and just like not a lot of people know what they're doing, especially with taxes. It's hard. But in a perfect world, I can just pull up my phone and spend my Nano on a cup of coffee, dinner, and I also like hotels, right? I've done that as well.
Yeah.
I spend it on a hotel, and
I
it's
watched that video.
thank you. I've used Nano and enjoyed my stay, and it felt it was so smooth. And but the thing is, like my honest take as a cryptocurrency enthusiast and user is that like how different is it? But like this is me also comparing the hotel transaction because I have to wait. Like let's say I have a trip like this weekend, and I pay with Nano. It's so fast, confirmed instantly. But I have to wait. Like it's not the instant gratification isn't there, and but if I do buy coffee, if I do like spend it in a in person store, pay for parking, pay a ticket, whatever it is, like it's just I feel like that's the perfect world that Nano, I guess, aims to be because you just use your Nano and just like you can spend it and you get what you had paid for.
Yeah, I just try. I mean, I feel like the whole purpose of Nano is to make things as simple as possible, but in the US, using Nano becomes like a 17-step process because you have to write down that transaction. You have to then put it into a file. Then you have to, at the end of the year, you have to go through all those and you have to report every single one and then pay taxes on all those times you did it. And so it's like all of a sudden, any cryptocurrency doesn't become a simple, easy process to use anymore. And I think that's what I get frustrated with is it's like, so what I've been thinking about lately, and I want to get your take on this, is I actually want to create a Nano clone that's a stable coin. So kind of like DAI with ETH and how
Oh,
and originally
I want to hear this.
they only used ETH to keep the peg of DAI. But then eventually they started allowing USDT or USDC and that kind of just and then that became dangerous because USDC can be frozen and then that kind of fucks up DAI, and so DAI's in danger now of that. But if there was a way to keep like, you know, USDN or something like that, and it runs the same exact way as Nano, but you know, however they used to keep the DAI peg with ETH by trading it back and forth and selling it and buying it, do that with Nano, because then you wouldn't be paying taxes on a stable coin technically, because it's just a stable coin. Like you're not making any profits on it. You're not making any losses on it. It's you know, relatively, it's the same price every single time. So I feel like that would create a money maker or a market maker effect for Nano, because you have to keep trading it back and forth to keep that peg. And then people could use it on a daily basis without worrying about, you know, the deflation, about using a deflationary asset. Because I always say, like, no intelligent person would ever take their Apple stock and buy a cup of coffee with their Apple stock. Right? Because 99.9% of the time, that Apple stock is going to be worth more tomorrow than it was today.
Right. Okay.
And
I got your point.
And that's why deflationary currencies, that's the same thing. Is like when you have a currency that's deflationary, it's worth more tomorrow than it was today. And so it discourages people from buying anything beyond the basic needs to survive, because, hey, do I really need to buy that new refrigerator today? Can I wait another week and have my money just make that much more money? It's like people just keep putting off those purchases, and then just the economy starts to slow down and stagnate a little bit. So, I mean, maybe that's better for society, maybe it's better for humanity, but if we're trying to just slowly change and move towards cryptocurrency, I think we have to be realistic that, you know, there's a reason why the entire world uses USD, is because it's relatively stable. It's a little inflationary, but the goal is to be inflationary at 2%. And that's roughly the amount, you know, that's roughly the growth of the population. And so if you keep the inflation set to population growth roughly, then it's always going to be $1 is $1.
I feel like the angle you're taking here is coming from a trader perspective.
No. This is all about usage. Like, because I'm like, why aren't people using Nano? Like
in
what are the
terms of
reasons
their
not
day
to
to
use it?
day, and
Yeah,
like, you know, hey, like I'm gonna book a hotel in Travala or whatever.
exactly.
Gotcha.
It's the same reason. Like, it's the same reason why if I don't need to sell my Apple stock today, if I say, oh, you know, I could sell my Apple stock and go buy a new computer today, or like, okay, well, can I get like 2 or 3 more months out of my computer? Because there's a chance that Apple's going to go up in the next 2 to 3 months. So why wouldn't I just get that extra money? Why wouldn't I wait to the last possible minute for my computer to actually collapse and then sell my Apple stock? And so, like, there's a reason not to buy stuff when it could be worth more tomorrow than it is today. Versus if you're using a stable coin, it's just, oh, I need a computer. I don't worry about it. I don't think about that. Like right now, nobody thinks about, is my dollar going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today? I mean, maybe right now because of all the shipping stuff and inflation because of COVID. But a year and a half ago, nobody thought about that. Nobody thought, should I not buy this today because I'm able to get it cheaper tomorrow, outside, unless, like, you know, something went on sale. But like, we're not thinking about that with milk, right? Like,
I mean, maybe milk now because it's so expensive nowadays.
but pre-COVID, no one was thinking like, oh, I shouldn't buy this milk today because I might be able to get it cheaper tomorrow.
Right. No, I definitely get you on that. I think the whole thing with people not using their Nano in terms of, I guess, day-to-day transactions is because of also like speculations, not just the tax concerns and not just like the regulation concerns even. I feel like it's also like speculation, because if you ask anyone in the nano space, everybody believes that it's undervalued.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of as a currency, or, you know, yeah, I think just a currency. I think people believe that it's severely undervalued rather
Exactly.
than like the $5 to $6 that it's trading at right now.
So nobody wants to use it. That's the same problem with Bitcoin. Everyone's like
But
hodl, hodl, hodl. It's just like
right,
I
right.
mean,
But
everyone.
the
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, but the thing is, I think that's where the nano community kind of separates. There's a lot of people that actually use it, and there's a lot of people that just constantly accumulates it and buys it. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm one of those people that actually use it. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of people that I mean, the other day, like I saw, what do you call this? Like on the nano currency subreddit, someone bought like some hot sauce, and with their nano, and it's just like some odd things, and it's like, you know, they're really pushing for the adoption of nano being used by merchants and actual stores, and I feel like that's the other side of the cryptocurrency nano cryptocurrency spectrum, I guess. Like people actually want to use it and people actually want to hold it, whatever tribe you're in. I know those two tribes still believe that nano is severely undervalued, not just as a currency like in terms of price, but also as a piece of technology.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I mean, like, what my fear is that you know, two pizza Bitcoin guy is a cautionary tale.
Yeah, oh my god, that guy.
Don't use your cryptocurrency.
But that's
That
kind of like hindsight though, Michael, don't you think?
Well, but that's how we grow as a society. We tell these stories, we learn about these stories, and then we use them as cautionary tales. Hey, if you buy an asset that increases in value over time, don't use it until you absolutely have to. Definitely don't use it on fucking pizza, because that Bitcoin you spent on that pizza is now worth like $87 million.
So my fear is like when I had spent 37 nano on I think a night or 2 nights I think at Palm Springs with Travala.
Yeah,
I was like, holy shit, like this might be like $37,000 in the future or something like
exactly.
that. I get you on that 100%, but I feel like that's also part of the process, right? Like I don't mind losing out on that amount of money if obviously if that's not like all of my nano, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, but it's a good amount for a lot of people, and I feel like you know like if you just look at like hey like someone spent 10,000 bitcoins on a few pizzas like back in 2011, that's like hindsight, and I do get that too, but I think that it still does come down to the two tribes of people that follow nano. So
Well,
I know I get that fear
yeah.
for sure because like I feel that I spend nano here and there, and I was like, oh my god, I spent like what do you call this, a few nano on Nurch, like just buying nano merchandise on like this website too, and it was like, oh my god, like what if this like nano just skyrockets up to like $10-15, right? Like oh my, like that would suck, but whatever.
Well, so and the flip side of that argument is Bitcoin probably wouldn't be where it was if it wasn't for Two Pizza Guy.
Exactly, and I'd like to think that I'd be that pizza guy.
You know, but like no, it's like if it wasn't for Roger Ver going out there and trying to convince people to let him give them a Bitcoin. He had to beg people, please let me. He'd go to those conferences and just walk up and be like, please let me give you one Bitcoin. And I bet you all those people who said, "No, screw you," blah blah, I'm sure they're kicking themselves right now. Now that it's $65,000, and so it's like, but you had to have people doing that in the beginning just to prove that it worked. So my point of creating a nano based stable coin that's kept that keeps its peg using nano, that allows people to save their nano as a store of value and then in turn use a stable coin based on nano day to day without worrying about, oh my god, is this 37 USDN going to be worth $37,000 a year from now or 2 years from now. It takes away that worry.
But isn't that kind of like the same equivalent of just selling your nano for fiat? for USD and just spending it.
I mean, the point of like buying stocks is you buy a stock and then you let it sit there and
Right.
mature
No,
over time.
I get that. With like the Apple stock, I feel like if you do sell the Apple stock, I don't remember how much it's trading at right now. But it's like, if I sell my Apple stock today and I'll just buy a MacBook, right? That's basically where you're getting at. At the same time, I know it's not fully that, but it's very similar, don't you think?
No, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. And if the entire world was being paid with Nano, then but then it gets back to the same point: is there's a fixed supply of Nano, and as the human population increases over time, it discourages using the Nano because it might be worth more today than it was tomorrow. So why not hold it and then have I forget the the phrase. We had Noah Smith on here, and he said it's something like good money pushes out bad money, and good money is money that you don't think about, like you just use instinctually use. You don't worry about what it's going to be worth today or tomorrow, because that's good money. Bad money is money that like you're constantly worrying about the value of it and having to do math in your head. Is now a good time to use it? Is now a bad time to use it? Like that's bad money. Good money is the most seamless money you could possibly think of. It's just, hey, I need a cup of coffee. I've got the money. Here's the money. Cup of coffee. Great. Value.
I,
Whereas you thought about, holy shit, is this 37 nano going to be worth $37,000 5 years from now? That's
right.
bad. That's bad money.
Definitely bad money. I get you that. I get you on that. But in terms of like bad money and good money, I feel like that comes into like a micro argument in terms of it comes to the down to the individual that actually wants to spend it and actually like buy it. I feel like I said, I feel like a lot of people don't even think about spending their nano, and I feel like a lot of people do believe in like a future where there's a lot of merchants that take nano, and I feel like that's I want to believe that's like a future that we can live in terms of actually just using your nano without it being pegged to USDN or DAI or whatever the case may be, and we can just spend our nano freely. But then that comes into like with the argument of like, hey, like should nano become like an actual stable coin, right?
Oh no, I'm not advocating that Nano becomes a stable coin. I'm advocating
Right,
for a second coin that is pegged using Nano. And so
right. No,
Nano
no,
is
no.
kind of like gold reserve or whatever, and then it
Right,
keeps the stable coin that also runs like it'd be like a clone of Nano, and then people just run nodes for that as well, and they
right,
would run
right.
both side by side.
No, no, no. I definitely get you. I think that in terms of it being pegged to nano, if I'm understanding properly here, I feel like that just
It'd be pegged to
adds.
USD. It'd be pegged
Oh,
to
USD
USD.
rather. Sorry.
It's all right.
I feel like it'd be adding layers of inconveniences and also headaches. In my opinion, in my honest opinion, I feel like, hey, like, can we just have like the currency, the nano XNO at this point, right, and spend it here and there? And I feel like that would be a wonderful future that we can live in. And like I said, with the whole like Sharon's episode here, yeah, the cryptocurrency spaces I feel like is a wild west, and people are constantly trying to figure it out. And with the whole like tether thing going around, and all these regulations and people getting checked in terms of the SEC, um, it's all still trying getting figured out. And I feel like we're really early in the space, and I don't put it past me that that can be a possibility in terms of spending your nano being pegged to the USD, because that 37 nano could be $37,000 in the future.
Yeah,
I don't know what the case may be, but yeah.
yeah. Um, I only think that because I don't ever see any government in the world having Nano be their currency. I don't see any government relinquishing control of their financial system to a completely decentralized international body, right? Like we
Hmm.
don't even like being controlled by the UN.
Right.
And that's just like policy of how we deal with other countries. That's not even our financial system. I can't imagine the US ever saying, "Sure, we'll be at the behest of a few coders, you know, coding Nano and some people and making sure people confirm the transactions by running a few nodes here and there." Like I just don't see
So,
any government ever doing that.
so do you think the whole El Salvador and Bitcoin as a legal tender was a mistake? What do you think about that?
Um, well,
Disregarding Nano and its technology, is wonderful technology, for a second here, but in terms of cryptocurrency being used as a legal tender, in terms of not, I know like El Salvador doesn't just take Bitcoin and spend it,
yeah.
but having it as another piece of legal tender in that country. Do you think that's kind of giving control to a few coders?
Yes, and I feel like it's a way to take advantage of poor people. So I have a friend that I work with who's from El Salvador, and he's not super educated. You know, he's a busser. Yeah, he's my age. Um, he's been here for like 15 years, and he was like, "Hey, I was back there at the beginning of COVID. He got kicked out of the country. He got kicked out of the country by Trump, um, and he finally got back in. And he was like, everybody there, like everybody I talk to, loves it. They love what Bukele's doing. Like they love that he's building roads and doing this and doing that. But when you don't have the education, the historical knowledge of what authoritarians do, where I said, well, what about when he held up the Congress at gunpoint and kicked out the entire Supreme Court and filled it with all his friends? He's like, oh yeah, that's bad, but he's building all these roads for us. So they don't have the historical context to understand like that's the power play. Is he, the authoritarian leader does a couple bad things, and then they start doing really, really. I mean, you have first hand experience with the Philippines.
Right.
I mean,
And
Duterte's a fucking monster.
right,
Did,
I 100%
did
agree with you on
anybody
that.
think when he was saying all those amazing things to get elected that he was going to turn around and start murdering people who were using drugs, let alone if they were addicted to them or not? Just start murdering people left and right, throwing journalists in jail. I mean,
Right.
it's fucking crazy what he's
Just
doing.
executing them on the streets, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like the political side is definitely a different conversation. But in terms of El Salvador and Bitcoin as legal tender, I definitely agree with you that on that, like in terms of it being a power play. But in terms of adoption, that's where I think I'll disagree with you on that, because I think a lot of people are happy that Bitcoin is being used as an actual currency in El Salvador, but I do know that people tend to hold on to it in terms like your argument, um, that like, hey, like this might be worth a lot more tomorrow, like 10,
Yes.
20%, whatever it is tomorrow. But in terms of the future that we're building, the cryptocurrency in itself, I think, has a lot of meaning and movement behind it. In the right hands and in the right, I guess, central authority government, I feel like it can really change a lot of people's lives in terms of day to day usage. Because Bitcoin being used as legal tender in El Salvador, in whatever Bukele decides to do outside of cryptocurrency, um, I feel like it still changes the outlook on a lot of people's day to day, not just spending, not just holding, hodling, I guess, but in terms of actually believing in quote unquote decentralized finance, despite it being governed by the El Salvador's government.
I
I
mean,
don't know if I'm making sense here, but
yeah. No, but I think here's my fear is it all looks rosy until he starts murdering people in the street, and then everyone starts associating Bitcoin with a murderous dictator.
But wasn't that like the case too in terms of the early days of Bitcoin, Silk Road? Like everybody was like, "Oh my God, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies used by criminals, money laundering, all that." And now we hear that with NFTs. But Bitcoin's being used all over the world, unfortunately and fortunately. But in terms of it, like having this sort of like background, I feel like
I mean, people are buying it as a speculative asset.
right,
There's only 1 million active wallets a day on Bitcoin.
right,
I mean, yeah, think about that. 1 million, and I say this all the time. There's 1 million active wallets daily for Bitcoin, and there's 10 million people living in Sweden. And those 1 million wallets are using as much energy as the entire 10 million people of Sweden. So it's 10 times less productive
right. No,
than
I get
regular
you on
energy.
that.
So it's
But
like,
then, yeah, go ahead.
so I mean, so it's like the idea that people are using it is a misnomer, and maybe people may be buying it and just sitting on it just because they want to get rich, right? And it's like it's like gold mining or something like that or whatever. But it's just like at the end of the day, what is it? If people are just using it as a speculative asset, then they're not actually using it. Then how is it actually helping humanity?
But then that's when I think the argument in terms of education comes into play, because in terms of market cap and supply, I I think people just want to hold Bitcoin because they think it's gonna rise in price in the future. And I have no doubts about that. But in terms of people saying like, hey, I'm going to hold, I don't know, 0.00001 Bitcoin and I'm going to be a millionaire in 10 years, that's very unlikely. And people just understanding tokenomics and just understanding the actual supply of Bitcoin and what it is, they can't just say that like, hey, I got into Bitcoin 2017 or 2021 and I'll be rich in a few years. That's highly unlikely, because I mean, if you look at the charts, man, like Ethereum is kind of taking over Bitcoin in terms of market dominance, and Bitcoin is just you know
Oh, I'm not talking about
going
Bitcoin in general. I'm talking about any cryptocurrency. Everybody thinks they're going to get rich. Anybody who's not in the cryptocurrency space and who
right,
doesn't buy, like, why does anybody buy cryptocurrency for the first time? 99% of the time, I'm just going to throw out, I'm going to make up a percentage and I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to say 99% of the time somebody buys cryptocurrency for the first time because they think they're going to get rich.
right.
So it's like they're not using it, because why would they use it? If it's like a lottery ticket.
But then,
You don't go buy a cup of coffee with your lottery ticket if you think your lottery ticket's going to be the winning numbers, right?
right, but then that's the thing too. Like in terms of education, like people don't know what actual cryptocurrencies do. Like established cryptocurrencies at least, because it's hard to actually understand. Like a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space think they know what they're saying. That's including me too. Most of the time I am just trying to figure out as much as everybody else on the platform and just like everybody else in the space, because there's so much things to learn, and it's just the wild west right now and nobody knows what the future holds, and we're just all speculating in the end of the day.
So this is my pitch for a nano based stable coin is, if I give you a stable coin and say this is worth $1, it was worth $1 yesterday, it's worth $1 today, and it's going to be worth $1 tomorrow, and it's never going to be worth more than $1. I guarantee you're going to use it to buy a cup of coffee. But if
I would
I
do that.
give you,
I do that every day with fiat.
yeah, but if I say, hey, here's a nano, there's a pretty good chance it's $6 a day. There's a pretty good chance, like 5 or 6 years from now, it'll be worth $1,000.
Right,
I have a feeling that you're just probably going to set that aside and keep using your stable currency,
right.
even though it's
But then
relatively stable currency.
my setback on that is like, why would I just can I just spend my fiat then? My US dollars that are rotting every single day, inflationary wise?
Yeah, that's the whole point of inflationary currencies. It
Right.
encourages people to use it as opposed to hold it. and governments want people to spend their money because it makes the economy more stable, right? So like when the stock market falls, there's this thing that they I'm blanking on it's like a poll. Consumer confidence. Where's the
Right.
consumer confidence? And when consumer confidence is low, they don't spend as much money. And companies start to lay off people. Businesses shut down because there's just not enough money flowing around. And businesses can't sustain each other. And if businesses can't sustain themselves, then they can't pay the people. And it's a cyclical, they call it a death spiral. Because more people lose work, so they don't have money, so they're not buying anything, and more shops have to shut down because there's not enough people buying anything. And it's a fucking death spiral. So that's my fear of if Nano were to become a currency like that, is
People not spending it.
yeah. Versus
Yeah.
if you have a
No.
stable coin and it's running the same exact way as Nano, where I can send, where you and me can send it back and forth a billion times, and it's still one USDN or one stable coin based on the Nano network, and it keeps that peg by you and me trading Nano back and forth on the exchanges to make sure it's always that USDN is always worth $1. However, ETH did it with DAI. MakerDAO. I forget. I would probably just try to recreate that. But like, I feel like there needs to be a way to encourage people to not think they have a lottery ticket.
Right. And I think it's also kind of just teaching people that not everything is a Dogecoin pump or like a Shiba Inu pump too. And when people
Yeah, but
actually
Nano
understand that,
is.
like,
You believe Nano is, and I believe Nano is. So like, how we're the ones who are trying to convince people to use Nano, but you and I both think it's going to be worth more.
right, definitely.
So how?
I do believe it's going to be worth more in the future. I'm not throwing out any, like actual price out there, but I do think that it's severely undervalued as well.
Yeah,
But I do also believe that spending Nano is beneficial in terms of the network. Just think about it in
absolutely.
terms of like the people that are integrating Nano into the businesses. Like, hey, like actually, like people are actually using Nano. Like, let's use this. And ultimately that raises speculation and also demand supply, oh sorry, not demand to for Nano, is because people think that like it's actually getting used. And that's why people are always pushing like, hey, when's the next partnership coming in, or hey, when's
Yeah.
like the next adoption coming in, because that honestly, people want to push for all these like big merchants and like big automotive factories to take Nano. um
But
but
nobody wants to
that
use the Nano. Nobody wants to
nobody
spend
wants
the
to use
Nano.
it, but you get to that
Like that's the
place by
rub.
actually using your Nano. And
Exactly.
I feel like it's a chicken and egg problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, what comes first, like the actual valued market cap, or is it actually the adoption of like actually people using it? And I think my my 2 cents in this to like the Nano community is just like, spend your Nano. If you're too scared of like losing out on it, like spend your Nano, replace it, and you'll sleep freely. And then if you like, oh, I could have like doubled it, right? Like I spent 1 Nano and then I bought like 2 Nano or whatever, right? Like that, but I still lost 1 Nano. It doesn't matter. Like in the next few years, if like Nano is going to be worth like whatever much, right? Like you I want people to believe that like you are helping the adoption and actually usability of Nano in the long run, because a lot of short-term games are being played in the cryptocurrency space right now, and not a lot of people are seeing the long run, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. I'm obliged to say, if you're an American, maybe don't do that just because of the tax implications. It's gonna bite you in the ass.
Yeah, you got to talk to Sharon about
But
that.
if you're not an American, I absolutely say, yeah, just do it, and then go out and buy more Nano if you like Nano, and just go out and buy more and try to get adoption through usage. But it is this real kind of catch-22, chicken and the egg thing. It's just like, that's why I think that's why America solved that problem by getting rid of the gold standard, But the danger is if you don't have a stable government in place, then inflation becomes a real issue.
Right.
And
And
outside of the early 80s, late 70s, which was kind of when we officially got off the gold standard, that was the first time there was really that kind of inflation. Um, you know, since then, inflation really hasn't been an issue up until now, and it's only now because it was a worldwide shutdown of every single nation's economy, and that hasn't happened for 100 years. So I think once that clears up,
but you can't forget about the 40% of the whole US dollar um supply was printed in the last 2 years.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, well, that one too.
well, I mean, because of a global shutdown, not because you had people who were being irresponsible and just willy nilly printing money for no reason. Um, they were injecting money into the economy to keep the economy afloat because people couldn't work. I think if everyone was working, they wouldn't have injected all that money into the economy.
Right,
The
and I
only
think
danger is when
people
you
were
have
also
Republicans in office who give tax breaks to billionaires who don't need it, and then they devalue the currency that way, and it doesn't help any of the poor people. It only helps the rich people.
right. And then I think with the whole like consumer confidence index, I felt like it was just at an all-time low when people were just scared of spending their fiat currency because obviously like COVID was scary, man. March of 2020, dude, like everything was out
Yeah,
of stock and it was just like you just don't know what's going to happen. And I feel like that's in terms of actual day-to-day life, that was a very very tragic time in history where people were just scared to spend because they don't know they don't have a job, they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. They could like spend this money, but that
but what were they
I think
doing? They were going out and spending as much as they could on durable goods like toilet paper, like canned goods, because they weren't sure if the food supply was going to dry up.
right
Right, so they were spending their money, but they weren't spending it on like, oh, let's go buy a new TV.
till the government printed a
Till the
lot of
government
money.
printed the money. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Now we can keep the economy going and blah blah. And all that ended up doing was just like helping the billionaires anyway.
But then I feel like that goes back to your argument a few minutes ago, where it's like, doesn't that I don't know, I wouldn't say authoritarian, but in terms of the U.S. being inherently a capitalistic country, I feel like that just really benefits everyone up top,
Oh, it
right? Doesn't it?
absolutely did. I mean, they made like people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos made record profits over the last 2 years. And but the average American average um, had more wealth at the end than they did before because a lot of them were just saving that money because they weren't making people pay rent, they weren't making people do this, they were helping with rent, they were giving them money. So like a lot of people pay. So the average person has less debt now than they did before COVID started.
Either a lot less debt or either a lot more debt. That's the only thing.
No,
But
no, the
then,
average person in this country, so over 50% of the people have less debt now.
right. Sorry, I meant like some people have more debt still. Um,
Yeah,
what
but
do you call this?
that's not the norm. I'm saying, but like that's a pretty crazy stat that the majority of people now have less debt. That's wild.
Right. And with in terms of like YouTube, I think the financial education YouTubers or YouTubes have seen record high viewers in
Yeah.
terms of people learning about financial education and just like financial
Yeah, let's get it
independence
back to your
after COVID.
channel. Let's promote your channel. What is the name of your channel anyway? We didn't even say that.
Oh yeah, well it's basically just Jason Carlo. You can find me there, Jason Carlo. If I think if you put it on YouTube, Jason Carlo Nano, you'll see me on there.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's just like a lot of more people were scared to spend their money, and like people were just hungry and thirsty for financial education after COVID hit, because dude, it was like so scary. You don't know what's gonna happen. Like you don't have that much money compared to like all these billionaires, millionaires, um, and you just and I feel like that's why I said, like, I feel like that goes back to people being scared to spend their currency because they don't know what's going to happen in the future. In this case, like with Nano, we don't know if Nano is going to be worth more in the future. We believe it will be worth more in the future, but in terms of COVID, I feel like people are just scared. They didn't know what was going to happen in the future to them or to their family, right?
I also think I think you're talking from a personal perspective,
Definitely,
and maybe
definitely.
you're coming into contact with a lot more immigrant families, first generation families, and maybe you're talking to those people because all the so I work in a department at a hotel where I'm the only American born person. Every single person is an immigrant that I work with. So there's 12 of us, and 11 of them are immigrants from Central Latin America, Central America and Mexico. Um, but it's a union. It's a union hotel. So none of them were worried because we all just collected unemployment. And the hotel was like, "All right, here's your paperwork. Just file for unemployment, and you have nothing to worry about." And so
Right.
immigrants in that situation that are familiar with that being in a union, they know they have security. And that's why those jobs are gold for them. And but I could see like immigrants, because I also worked at bars for 20 years that weren't unions. And if it shut down, that's it. You just don't have any money. You're fucked.
Exactly. And I feel
All
like
them just not being worried. Yeah.
that's the huge benefit in terms of like working for a union, is because you're backed. You're backed up, dude. Like you don't have anything to worry about if like your current employer kind of like fucks with you. Like
Yeah.
you're you're backed up by the big boy, you know? Like
Yeah.
you're good. But there's a lot of jobs out there that are not like backed by the union,
Yeah. I mean, like New
unfortunately.
York had record numbers of people going to food kitchens and just not knowing how they were going to eat every day. Like that's crazy. So as so it's like I definitely understand what you mean. We had record numbers of people who had food insecurity, but we also had record numbers of people who just had more money than they normally had, and they were just like, "Oh, I've got all this extra money."
Right. No, I definitely want to disclose that I am talking from speaking from a background of an immigrant family, and also coming from a third world country without like I don't even think like unions exist in the Philippines. Not as far as I know. Like at least to the scale of it is in the U.S. I worked for UPS back then too.
Okay.
I know. I was a supervisor for a hot minute there, and the unions for like the drivers and people that load the trucks, they honestly just didn't really give a shit because like they know they're backed. We can't really tell them anything,
Yeah.
and I respect that and I get that, but there's that kind of like, you know, what tribe you're gonna be in kind of thing,
Yeah.
and it's hard. But in terms of a individual person basis, like you're good if you're working for a union. Like you're backed up, you know.
Yeah. No, it's definitely been a good job to have over the last 5-6 years.
Definitely.
So how can people? Well, you already said just search Jason Carlo Nano on YouTube. What about Twitter? How can people find you on Twitter?
Yeah. Yeah, so my socials, Twitter, Instagram, and even YouTube, just slash JasonESG. That's Instagram.com, Twitter.com, YouTube.com/ JasonESG. And you can find me there. Say hi. Unlike your favorite YouTuber, I'll actually respond. So yeah.
Nice. So, is there anything else you want to that? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that you didn't because I railroaded you and I talked about what I wanted to talk about instead, which I always end up doing on the show and I feel like an asshole afterwards.
No, no, no. I mean, I learned a lot, and you know, it's fun. As I I don't know. Just I think the only thing I want to talk about is just spend your nano, guys. Spend your nano. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to spend your nano. If you're too scared to spend your nano, spend and replace. That's the thing. Spend 10 nano, buy 10 nano, and that's the only workaround that we have at the moment. You know, until Michael develops this whole USDN thing going on right here. But spend your nano. It goes a lot further than you think because it really shows everyone in terms of the business side that people are actually interested in nano. And yeah, I think that's it. I mean, if you haven't told any of your friends about nano, tell them to download Natrum and show them. It's it's actually like that's the best way to have people adopt nano, I think, in terms of like the friends level.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty amazing. I mean, that's even back in 2017 when I first was using the developer wallet that was still kind of buggy. It was still 1,000 times better than anything I was using in
the
Bitcoin,
old wallet was so
Ethereum.
ugly.
Yeah. And you had to
Old
like
wallet was so ugly.
manually accept transactions. And I was just like, where's my money? Like, oh, you have to press this button and it goes, it tells it to accept it. And it's like, but even that was still 1,000 times better than all the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and IOTA wallets.
Right, and
And
you don't have to have unnecessary anxiety if you send
yeah,
nano or even receive it because you don't have to like worry about it. I mean, now like we got the new wallets like Natrum, Null. You
yeah.
just instantly receive it, you see it, and instant gratification. And who doesn't like that? Right?
It's funny that even if it's like a second and a half slow for some reason, because the app like hung for a second, I have like a little bit of anxiety. It's like, oh my god, did something happen? Like, where's my nano?
No,
But the
you just
fact that
got
it
it.
takes like
You just
two
got
seconds for me
spoiled.
to, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but that's how amazing Nano is. It's like if it's not there within 2 seconds, I start to have anxiety. Like that's how fast
No,
it is and consistent it is.
I definitely get you on that. I worry about that, especially like back then too. I think a few months back with the whole like spam attack too.
Yeah,
I tried sending nano to my other wallets and all that, just kind of moving funds around. And I was like, oh my god, where's my nano? I had to like wait a lot longer than
yeah.
I typically do, but those things are solvable. Just a matter of time till it gets like actually like fully solved. So
Do you know anything about 20 version 23?
So the thing is with version 23, I think there's something about like pruning ledgers and all that. I
Okay,
don't want to get into it too much, but it's a lot more technical and a lot more boring in my opinion.
gotcha. Okay.
I think the whole thing that I actually wanted to talk about too, like the new news that the foundation released,
Yeah,
where Nano is
totally forgot to talk about that.
XNO now, and they have a very very cool currency symbol now,
Yeah,
and that got me like so excited. I know, like, what do you think about that new news?
I'm on the fence because I feel like they had already done one rebranding and then a second rebranding. I get the idea of why they're doing the X. That makes total sense because all currencies have to start with an X, and like that's why BTC is traded as XBT, and so that totally makes sense to me. But then when they said you can't use the Nano logo anymore because that's for the Nano Foundation, I was like, what?
Wait, who said that?
Nano Foundation,
Well,
George.
no,
Yeah,
I,
she
I
said, this is we expect people to not use this anymore. This is for the Nano Foundation and our partners that we work with. You should just use Nano. Like you should just say Nano. And I was like, what? So there's like no. And I think in her mind that X with the two lines through it should be the new logo,
I think
just like
I
the B with the two lines through it is the Bitcoin logo.
no, you're right. I get where you're coming from, and I think I've seen that on the Discord too. But I think people misconstrue that as like, oh, the Nano Foundation is going to sue everyone that doesn't use X instead of the cool N logo, right? I think uh, I just think that like using both is still fine in terms of people. I mean, obviously, I can't speak for the foundation, but
Yeah.
when you're showing people when you're showing people what nano is and like like using the N or like the X, right, it's still shows the same currency, or like it still stands for the same
Yeah.
currency, right? Like I feel like that's all like details that people like to kind of, like twist and pull whatever it is into their own belief. But
Well,
I'm still,
I
I
like
still have on my
consistency.
thumbnails, I still have the old logos. I mean, I might change some, like for the Travala video, for
Yeah, I don't think
just
they
for
care
because I'm
about
actually
that,
spending
but
it.
I think
Right.
like if third party companies start using Nano or promoting Nano, I if unless it's a Nano Foundation partner. But then I'm like, the whole like Nano Foundation is going to dissolve at a certain point. So we're not like people aren't supposed to use the 7 dots anymore after Nano Foundation dissolves. It's like just the lack of clarity and the lack of foresight to talk about, to have this like perfectly in writing beforehand, got me a little annoyed. So I was just like, come on. Like, you should know exactly. They should have said, this is the new Nano logo. This, the 7 dots, is the Nano Foundation logo. Two different things. From now on, the X with the 2 slashes is the new Nano logo from now on. Moving forward. Full stop. Okay, great. Everybody uses that now. Because now it's like some people are still using 7 dots. Some people are using the X. Like there's not consistency, and I don't like confusion in spaces like this, especially in decentralized spaces. It's just like I just feel like it confuses new people, and I don't. It's like it's already this space is already as confusing as it is, and I feel like you instinctually have the desire to educate people. I instinctually have the desire to educate people. That's why we both have our perspective podcasts and YouTube channels. And when there's even something like that, I mean, even with the Nano thing, even saying Nano is just pennies to Nano, it took me a day and a half, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, I think, actually, of testing out language that made people completely understand. No, Nano is not a new currency. It's just like Satoshi's. It's just like it's just like cents. It's just like, but like I had to keep like beta testing language to finally find something that I could say consistently every single time and people weren't confused anymore. And I feel like Nano didn't really do that. Like Nano Foundation didn't really do that with the logo. And I felt like they should have done that with the logo ahead of time and made sure that everyone was aware and everybody in the community was on the same page. Because I think like the people in the community just want direction from them, and they have a tendency of not giving any direction. And I feel like
Right.
that's
No,
kind of dangerous.
right. I get you in that in terms of like the education perspective, because people might be confused. But I think that um with US dollars, and the S with the line
Yeah.
through it, and USD, or like whatever people use for dollars, and USD X no in this case, right? And dollars equals to Nano. um I feel like that comes with time. It's just like the initial confusion too, where people are like, "Oh my god, all these old memes are gonna be so outdated now.
Yeah.
All like these pictures are gonna be outdated now." Like, I feel like people are worried about the wrong things. I'm definitely looking at it more long term in terms of like, this is great because it's actually seen as an actual currency, and you obviously know how I feel about it being used as a
Yeah.
currency. So I'm excited about this, and I get why you're a little bit annoyed. I've seen people on the Discord too been annoyed. It's like, hey, like, what the hell's going on? All this stuff. But I think time will tell, and I'm sure there will be news around the new XNO change with George and Colin coming out. But we'll see. We'll just gotta give it some time.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, the whole like Nano thing too. I think that was honestly, I was a bit confused, but I did understand when I read into it. But I can understand where people um don't do the same type of research that I do.
yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. And I mean, I'm in a conspiracy theory here, tinfoil hat. I don't even know if Colin's still around. I think he's just an animatronic robot at this point because I haven't seen him in real life, doing interviews or anything like that. Have you? In the last 6 months to a year?
last 6 months. Didn't he do the one with Chicken Genius Singapore like the past 6 months?
Oh, maybe he did.
Uh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did. He did. He
yes,
did. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. All
yeah.
right.
So I think he's still a fully functioning human being around. I think he's coding around V23, V24, maybe, I don't know, but I think he's still around. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for playing with me on that one.
I think he's still good.
Yeah,
Just blink,
he's there.
blink if
Yeah,
blink if you're held
exactly.
hostage.
Blink if you're not a bot. If you're not a Twitter bot.
Right. Blink if Satoshi didn't hold you captive.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and chatting and letting me fucking talk your ear off about stable coins and shit.
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me here, man. It's definitely a fun one for sure.
And I will have all of Jason's links in the show notes. Check out his YouTube channel. He has great, relatively short videos that are chock full of knowledge. So if you don't have a ton of time, there's not one of those videos where you have to sit there for like 50 minutes and listen to a lecture. It's always fun to just 5-10 minutes, get so much information, or just like cool narratives of like you taking that trip and using Nano along the way, and just your experience. Like that was a really fun video to watch. So definitely check out his videos.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate the plug, man. Yeah, come say hi. Like I said, I'll actually respond to you guys. Tweet at me, whatever the case may be. Say hi, and I'm always happy to chat.
Sweet. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Talk to you on the next one.
Peace.